Once again, I'm very, very excited to have all of you with us on this webinar. We call it Start Your Business Over 50. And now it's time to introduce our presenter, Jeff Williams. He's the founder of Bizstarters. Jeff, welcome.
Hi, David.
Great to have you. And if you don't mind, I'd like to tell everyone a little bit about you. So Jeff started his first entrepreneurial coaching business just before his own 40th birthday, after realizing during an 18-year career as an MBA-trained corporate marketing guy that what he really wanted was to be able to act upon his own creative ideas quickly, nimbly, and without interference from the higher up in management. So we started Bizstarters.com. The company today helps people over 50 start their own businesses, and often as a whole new life chapter unfolds for them. Now, Bizstarters was selected by the editors of Kiplinger's Personal Finance magazine as the best entrepreneurial guide for people over 50. Jeff's company was also given the award for program excellence by the U.S. League of Cities for their innovative business startup coaching program offered to downsized corporate managers. Jeff's been helping boomers coast to coast get started again with their entrepreneurial ventures for more than 27 years. And he has a vision, and this vision is particularly interesting. He doesn't just want to offer training and coaching, but he also wants to create community and connection with all the clients he works with. Let's get started, Jeff, shall we? So many of the folks attending today are in their mid-50s or older, as I am, and this is usually a time where we start thinking about retirement. So what's going on here? Why are we now talking about continuing to work?
Well, a survey by Merrill Lynch recently indicated that more than 75% of the people between 55 and 65 said they want to keep working well into their 60s. It's obvious from this survey and several others that the older boomers look at retirement differently than our parents did. We're nowhere near ready to stop working altogether. We want to continue to be in the middle of the action. We want to continue to contribute. Now, the survey also revealed, however, that we do want to work differently than we may have worked in the past. There were three particular aspects to this. The first was that we want to do work we really love doing every day and that we know we're really good at doing.
Yeah.
The second one was that we want to have better balance between our leisure time and our work time. Unfortunately, when you're in the corporate world, quite often you have to give up a lot of your outside life in order to work with the schedule that you're given. Number three, we want to give back. We're very oriented toward this. I know many of the boomers started doing this back in the 60s, and they continue to have this drive. And lastly, there's a financial requirement here too, and that is that we really want to boost our retirement income.
So more and more of us are becoming our own bosses and discovering the art of being an entrepreneur. How important is this to us in terms of the planning in your post-retirement years?
Well, it's become quite important. In 2014, the Kauffman Foundation, which monitors entrepreneurial activity, indicated that 25%, and this is an amazing number, 25% of all new businesses started in the U.S. were managed by someone over age 55.
Amazing.
There's more than 150,000. So it's obvious that a lot of us are coming to the conclusion that if we want this ideal set of work characteristics, we're going to have to create our own work. And that's what you do when you start your own business.
Right, exactly. You become your own boss. You create the way you want to do it in terms of time management, in terms of energy management, and there's so much you can leverage from your past thrusting forward. So how does being an entrepreneur, how does this work? For those of us who have worked in an environment where they were working for someone as an employee for so many years, this may remain a bit of a mystery. Talk to us a little bit about how this kind of work can work for us.
Well, the first really compelling aspect of this is that by becoming self-employed, particularly later in life, you are in essence turning a passion into profit. You are using a skill, an experience, or a very strong personal interest to satisfy the needs of others who will very willingly pay you well for doing that. Secondly, and this is a key today in the job market in the United States, is that age does not really matter when you run your own business. All your customers care about is that you provide what you promised when you promised it. And as I said earlier, another very compelling feature of being your own boss is that you can create your own schedule. For example, if you want to take a week or two off to go visit your grandchildren, as long as you've made sure your clients are taken care of or your customers are taken care of, you have the freedom to go and do that.
Love that. Okay. Now, you've mentioned that you do get, you've been doing this a while, Jeff. You get a lot of questions from individuals who are considering all of this. They're considering becoming their own boss. They're 50 or somewhere beyond 50. Let's talk a little bit about some of the questions you get and how you answer them.
Yes, thanks, David. I do get frequently 5 or 6 questions repeatedly asked to me, so I'm glad to have the opportunity to answer these questions here and now. The first question I get is that, isn't it really expensive to run a business? Well, it's actually not. It's never been less expensive to run a business than it is today. For example, I run 3 different business enterprises for less than $500 a month. So it's really not that expensive at all. Let's look at the next slide. This is a typical expense budget for one of our startup clients on a monthly basis. And you'll notice that the total is less than $1,000 a month. And that includes money for health insurance premiums. Now, let me just put this in perspective. If you're selling a craft item at $50 each, you need to sell about 20 per month to cover these expenses. Then everything else you make is profit for you. And similarly, if you're selling consulting at $150 an hour, you need to sell 7 hours per month to cover these expenses, and the rest is profit.
And showing you the recoup on that and sort of the different kinds of businesses and the way the economics function for you in your own business.
Okay, the second question we get frequently is, do I have to risk my retirement assets to start a business? No, you do not. Many new businesses, and certainly most of our startup clients, are launching for well under $10,000. Now, I don't mean to imply that $10,000 is a small amount of money. It's not, but this is a level of investment that you usually can handle out of your savings and don't really need to go outside for any kind of financing. Next question we get, and once again, this goes back to the need of boomers to give back, is I get asked, can I work to solve a social problem? You certainly can. There are 2 primary ways I see this being done. The first is to start a full-time nonprofit corporation. And this permits you, once you get your plan together, to go out for grants and corporate funding to help finance your pursuit of a social problem. The second way to do it is the way I do it, and that is to run a for-profit company and then to contribute a certain amount of time each month to a cause that is important to me, plus perhaps some financial help. In my case, I have 3 different causes that are really important to me. I probably put 5 to 7 hours a week in volunteer time, and once or twice a month I give some money to these people. And I do that because my company makes a profit.
Yeah, and once you get to a certain age, the legacy, what you're doing to give back to the world and your community becomes much more important to us, right?
Yes. Next question, do I have to figure out all of the business startup steps all by myself? No, you do not. There are 3 really outstanding sources of help today. The first is online information sites, and my favorite is a site called StartupNation.com, which features thousands of articles, blog posts, checklists, and different types of resource guides to help you learn a little bit about just about any part of running a business. The second really outstanding resource, of course, is the United States Small Business Administration. They fund hundreds of small business development centers around the United States that provide both training and coaching. In my area, Chicago, where I am located, there's about 20 of these centers in the immediate area. And the third really outstanding resource to get intense help is through a business coach. And as David mentioned earlier, I'm very proud to say that my company, Bizstarters.com, has been given an award by Kiplinger's Personal Finance as an outstanding guide for people over 50. Next question, how do I know if I have a good business idea? Well, this is a very understandable question. This is I find the number one obstacle for why really talented people don't move ahead with starting a business later in life is that they're not confident they have a good business idea.
Yeah.
I suggest that you use a 5-step process. And let me just go through the steps very quickly here. The first step is to think about what specific problem you can solve with your experience or your knowledge. Write that down on a piece of paper. Then below that, write one short paragraph of how you are going to solve the problem. And in that description, emphasize your unique capability. The third step is to think about how much money you might make from this kind of business. And in order to do this, you have to have a good sense for how many dollars you might make in a typical transaction. For example, I earlier gave an example of a craft business, and in that business your average sale might be $50, whereas in a consulting business your average sale might be $5,000. The fourth step is to write down a dollar amount for the amount of personal compensation you feel you have to have your first year in business. Let's say it's $50,000. You then want to divide that number by how many dollars you think you make in a typical transaction. And let's use the consulting company as an example. If your typical contract is $5,000 and you divide that into $50,000, that means you have to have 10 consulting contracts in 1 year's period of time in order to make your income goal. The last step is a reality check where you ask yourself, based on who I know now and what I know now, can I sell this amount in 1 year? And I think that most people who are very knowledgeable in a particular area and go into consulting can sell 10 jobs in a year.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this. It's a very, very useful, practical, pragmatic checklist. You know, obviously the market will speak, and one needs to go and ask folks what do they think about it. And you can get input from your peers, potential clients, to start to get a feel about whether there's really a market for this. But also you don't only want to ask your inner circle, right, Jeff? You want to talk to people outside your inner circle so that you can really test the product, right?
That's absolutely right. I mean, it's key that you talk to 50 to 100 potential buyers and say, not so much, don't ask them how much they would pay for it, because people are notoriously wrong on that particular question. But just say, I'm thinking of offering these 3 features. What would you think about these? Are they really important to you, or are they moderately important to you? Mm-hmm. And that's really key to building this. But it all starts from the fact that here's the reality of successful business. People and companies have problems. They want them solved. They'll pay to have them solved. Can you provide the solution?
Absolutely. Now let's move into the operational side of it, which I know is of major concern.
Right. Well, just like people ask me, do I have to figure out how to start the company all by myself? People then say, do I have to run my business all by myself? Right. Well, let me answer this by giving the perspective that I've learned from dealing with a 50-plus population, and that is that these particular people are successful corporate managers, and many of them had to supervise employees during their corporate career. And they're a little bit burnt out from doing that. So when they come to me, they explicitly say, I'd like to run a business without full-time employees. Maybe have some help occasionally from a family member. So here's how you do this. The first thing you can do is to use business technology that's out there, things such as Skype or accounting programs like QuickBooks. These allow you to get a lot of administrative tasks done in your company without really having an outside person to help you to do it. The next is to add online services. And one of my favorites is a service called Constant Contact, which provides email marketing services, which allows you to stay in touch with people, make them offers over time. This is all a process you can run yourself. You don't really have to have a marketing director to do this. And then there's the third part, and I just used this myself last week, and that is that it's very easy to find independent contractors today, or freelancers, however you want to describe them. For example, about a week ago, I wanted to have a new logo designed for one of my clients. So I went online into a site called guru.com, and I posted up a project asking for people who could design a logo. I got 12 responses back from people all over the world, because it shows you where they're from. They were from Croatia. They were from Europe. They were from South America. I read through the responses. I found the one I thought was the most experienced, and I said, okay, I want you to do the job. He did the job in 3 days. I paid him $10 to do a logo.
Yeah, for those of us that have been in the business world for any length of time, it sounds obscene to be paying. And I've done the same. It's amazing the resources you can get through sites and platforms like Elance and so forth that are out there that where you can find really high level talent because there's enough supply out there to drive costs down. So it's a new world, very much a new world.
Sure is. Let's go to our next question.
Yeah.
Isn't there more security in a job? I get asked this all the time, and this is based on the way jobs were 15 years ago. According to information from the U.S. Department of Labor statistics, over the last 5 years, which is largely the period of time since we came out of the recession, 35% of all new businesses over the last 5 years have been for temps and freelancers. And these jobs typically are lower paying, under $15 an hour, and they have no benefits. There's no health coverage. There's no sick days. So I think you have to ask yourself, is there really more security in a job than in a business? When you consider that when you own your own business, the way you develop security is by having a group of customers that you keep happy. And if you do this, you will continue to make money for as long as you can maintain your relationship with these customers. So I think there's more security in running your own business today.
Well, I've always been a member of the running my own business, even before I was 50. I'll just share that it's absolutely true. You build up a what I'll call a cascading tapestry of clients that you circle through and around, and they're always in the mix, and some of them go and some of them come, but you get to a certain point where you've got this core group in the consulting model, which I think is what we're talking about here for the most part, and you really begin to feel that security. You know that at a certain interval, that next client's going to come in, even when there's churn. And what happens is the neurosis, the worry about will it continue goes away as long as you're focused on what you're doing and you're truly engaging with your customers.
Well, you're absolutely right. Let me just say one last thing about this, and that is that happy customers will refer other people to you. And in fact, they'll be more than pleased to do that. I've had customers say, Jeff, is there anything I can do? And I'll say, yes. Do you know anybody else who might want this? And they'll be more than glad. I'll tell you the reality in the corporate world today is you can't even rely upon your boss to recommend you for a promotion.
Yeah.
So where's the more reliable process? I'd rather rely on customers' goodwill to refer new customers to me than to rely on a boss to get a promotion.
Exactly, on the decision of one, which leads us quite nicely into the whole idea of marketing and how we acquire customers.
Well, this is a very important question. People know they're talented and people have a pretty good idea of what problem they're going to solve. And next question is, where do I find some people who want what I have? Well, there's some very good news for people over 50, and that is that we have two large populations of potential customers that we have an unusual affinity to. The first is our fellow boomers. There's 75 million boomers, and many of them are going to look at us as a sister or brother type person when we approach them with a marketing message. We're their peers. There's also 42 million people over 70 in the United States. And many of them are going to look at us as like a niece or a nephew and be very inclined to listen to what we're saying in our sales message. If you add these together, this gives you about 120 million potential customers who have an unusual connection to you because you're 55 or 60 years old. I think that a lot of successful businesses can be started with 120 million potential customers.
It's a vast marketplace, and because we're sitting in the amidst this baby boomer wave, population wave, as Harry Dent would say, it's a tremendous opportunity for those providing services back to that population that already know, like, and trust us on a certain level, simply because we're peers, we're in the same demographic.
All right, well, I mentioned part of this answer to this next question. Jobs come with benefits, self-employment doesn't. Well, what I'll just say here again is that increasingly, the jobs being created in the United States today pay under $15 an hour. This is not widely publicized in the major newspapers. I'm not quite sure why. It's some connection they have to Wall Street, I guess. But you think, okay, we've had 200, for example, last month they reported 226,000 new jobs. That sounds really impressive until you realize two things. Number one, experts tell us you need 200,000 jobs a month just to handle the new people entering the workforce. And secondly, many of these jobs were in food service or in hospitality, which doesn't pay. I will tell you that in a big metropolitan area like Chicago, if you're in doing consulting, you can start at least $150 an hour. So compare $15 an hour with no benefits against $150 an hour and the ability to get your own benefits pretty affordably. And where's the more attractive scenario? The last question that I get frequently is, how does running a business help my retirement funding? Not only are people over 55 or 60 and concerned about risking their retirement assets, but they also want to know, how can they go about building their retirement assets by running their own business? Well, I'm very happy to report that the IRS likes small businesses and self-employed people. They give us a variety of different methods to defer income that we make from our businesses. The most common one is called a SEP IRA, but you also can even have a 401k today in a small business. They're very affordable to set up. If you take all of these different tools together, you are allowed to put aside $40,000 a year or more. It could actually be in the $50,000 range if you're over age 50. You can put that money aside into a tax-deferred account and not pay any tax on it until later. And you can continue to do this for as long as you want. I know someone who's 78 years old who's still running his business and he's still putting money aside deferred.
The new generation of small business in America.
Okay, let me explain a wonderful new phenomena in America in the way small businesses run. This is one of the key reasons why we're seeing so many older boomers starting their own business today. Let me describe this new profile because this may not be familiar to many of you. It certainly wasn't true even 15 years ago. Let me describe the 5 features that characterize small business today and why it's so attractive. First of all, many of us work from a home office, and this therefore eliminates the need to have rent, and that in turn eliminates a big source of financial risk. Nobody really cares where you work from today as long as you take care of business. And with the sophistication of smartphones and tablets, you can be on the beach in the Caribbean and take care of your clients in many cases. Number 2, we often work without employees. As I said earlier, a lot of our clients who are in their late 50s, they're kind of burnt out from being managers of people. They don't really want to do that again. But if you need someone, you can usually find independent contractors, freelancers, or you can even buy online services that will take care of a lot of the administrative needs of your business. Number 3, and this is really fantastic, and that is, once you go on the internet, you are selling globally. Your message is going out around the world. By combining the web, email, and a phone service such as Skype, you can have partnership deals all around the world without ever leaving your office. Number 4, we promote inexpensively. When I started back in the late 80s, most businesses would promote themselves through newspaper or magazine ads and direct mail. Both of these were very expensive. I mean, you were looking at $5,000, $10,000 at a time in order to do these. Well, today, it's much less expensive. First of all, we use email marketing. And email marketing allows you to send out thousands of email messages every month for less than $25. You can use online services for publicity purposes. For example, you can send out a press story to 6,000 media through PR Web for $159 per release. And lastly, you can use social media. As many of you know, the basic accounts at Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn are free. So it's very effective ways to do marketing, and it costs you almost nothing.
Jeff, talk to us a little bit about some of the most popular types of businesses you see being run today.
Yes, thank you, David. There are 6 basic forms of business, which are called business models. And let me just talk about them briefly, and I'll use a client example to illustrate each of these.
Perfect.
Okay, the first is to sell a consumer service. And my example here is Jill, who was a chef for several different restaurants. And unfortunately, both the restaurants went out of business and she was unemployed twice in a row. She decided, I don't want this to happen again, but I love cooking. I love gourmet cooking in particular. So Jill started a home gourmet cooking service where she comes into your house or uses her own kitchen. She prepares a month's worth of food. She puts them in freezer bags, brings them to you, and you put them in your freezer. And when you want a good meal, you take them out, put them in the microwave, and in 20 minutes, you have a gourmet meal. And she charges a monthly fee for this, plus the cost of food. Next is offer consulting service. This is something that, David, I know you've done for a long time, and I've done for more than 25 years. A good example of how to do this effectively is my client, Ken. Ken was an award-winning health and safety manager in the corporate world when 6 years ago, the corporation came to him and said, we're laying off the whole department, 70-some people. Well, Ken knew that eventually they would come back to him because his area, health and safety, is mandated by the federal government to have certain processes done. And sure enough, Ken today runs a $200,000 consulting business from the den of his house in suburban Chicago. The next is to offer a local business service. A good example of this is my client, Ann Anderson. Ann spent many years in the Silicon Valley area where she learned some very sophisticated techniques for managing commercial property. Ann moved to the most southern tip of Texas a few years later to help take care of her mother, who was ailing. And shortly after arriving there, she realized that a lot of the property in this town was owned by absentee owners who lived somewhere else part of the year. She thought this would be a great opportunity to offer them maintenance and management services. And today she has a very profitable business taking care of these different homes and apartment buildings owned by people who live somewhere else.
Fantastic.
Next is to turn a hobby into a web store. About 6 years ago, I was at a church-run job search group here in suburban Chicago, and I met a guy named Jim Glay. And Jim said that he had been laid off very unexpectedly at age 59 a year before, and had spent a year of fruitless job search trying to find something that paid more than $8 an hour. And he was pretty much convinced it wasn't going to happen when he came to this group. So he said to me, I have a hobby. Do you think I could turn it into a business? And I asked him to describe his hobby, and when he did, I said, you absolutely can. And here's Jim's hobby. Since he's been 16 years old, Jim has played drums in either rock or jazz groups. He's a very accomplished drummer. And over the years, he would play gigs on weeknights and on weekends, and he accumulated a good amount of money from doing this. Well, he used the money to buy a very large collection of 1960s drum sets, which is the golden era of drumming.
Yes.
And when I met Jim, he was keeping them in a climate-controlled warehouse here in suburban Chicago. Well, we helped Jim over a 3-month period turn his hobby into a business called Crash Boom Bam. We helped him create an e-commerce website where we list all of his drum sets. Plus, now he's getting a lot of other people bringing his drum sets to him. He makes a good living working from his condo, selling drum sets around the world to collectors.
I love that. And of course, I was a drummer as well. So I have a particular affinity for that particular model.
Yeah, you really understand that, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
The next is to sell knowledge and information, and this is how I've grown Bizstarters. I sell two basic things in Bizstarters. I sell coaching, one-on-one coaching, and I sell do-it-yourself learning and training,
right,
which we're going to tell you more about later. This is the number 2 or 3 most successful way to make money on the internet today, is to sell knowledge and information. It can be in the form of a teleconference. It can be in the form of a workbook. It can be in the form of coaching in a workbook. There's probably 3 dozen different ways to make money from this. And what's beautiful about this is that your cost to do it is almost nothing. It's basically just your time to conceptualize or organize the knowledge, maybe put it into a 55-page book. Then you create what's called a PDF file, which doesn't cost anything. And now you've got a product that you can sell for $59, $69, $79 a piece.
I love that. It's all really intellectual property coming from you, your experience, and just leveraging your knowledge forward.
And the last style of business model that I see today frequently is, and this is also something I participate in, and that's to present teaching and training. It's estimated there are more than 6,000 what are called life coaches in the United States today. These are individuals who come from a wide variety of backgrounds, but they are there to help you, the individual, figure out your next job, what to do in retirement, how to deal with your family situation. These are common scenarios that they're doing. I have a friend here in Chicago, Melissa, who's a great example of this. Over the last 20 years, Melissa has written and published 11 different books. And along the way, she found out a lot about writing and publishing books. And today, she runs 3 times a year a 2-day live workshop here in Chicago, which she charges $800 for, to teach you how to go from your knowledge through a published book, how to get the cover art done, how to sell the book. And this is all offered in one course. So this is very typical today of how people make money from selling teaching and training.
This list is really, really a good sort of starting point for a lot of folks I know that are contemplating entrepreneurship, contemplating starting a new chapter with a small business of their own. Such valuable and amazing material. And I want to ask you and talk to you a little bit, Jeff, before we close out this part of our webinar. You have a very, very engaging coaching style. It's been said by folks that have worked with you that you have a particular way of an empathetic style and a way of engaging with people that's quite unique and makes you a unique standout in the market. Talk a little bit about your approach to what we talked about earlier, this idea of connecting and really building community around entrepreneurship after 50.
Well, thank you, David. I'm very appreciative of having a chance to talk about this. First of all, I see every client as a friend. So as we're developing their business and preparing to launch their business, we're getting to know each other, we're becoming friends. And I'm very pleased to say that I have startup clients from 15, 20 years ago who still communicate with me pretty regularly. They're now successful business owners. Maybe they've gone on to help somebody else. So I really try to do this. The second thing I do is that I help them connect with each other. It's not uncommon at all for one of my clients to buy a service from another one of my clients. I'm always on the lookout for needs among my clients, and if there's someone that I know can help them, particularly if I know someone over 50 who can help them, because I really do try to walk the walk and talk the talk. I don't just make a good income from dealing with people over 50, but they're an important part of my network. They're my suppliers, they're my customers, they're my friends. And I really try to connect this all together as I can. And the third thing that I do that's kind of unusual is that I have ongoing education. Once you get our basic coaching help to launch your business, we don't just back away from you. We offer both ongoing monthly coaching for 6 months after you launch your business, but we also offer regular educational offerings. These are done over the phone, what are called telegroups, and these are typically 60 to 90 minutes. And for example, one of them might be how to really use email marketing, or one might be how to collect money. So we know the full range of skills and abilities you're going to have to run your business. And we have sat down and systematically, myself and my team, I have a team of people, I have graphic artists and I have computer people. They all support me in what I do. And we create a continuum of not only interconnection between our clients, but also a continual stream of education and new knowledge for you.
The beauty of this is that any new business or any business at all should ideally become a learning organization. And you're really helping to support that idea. They're continuously learning, getting better, growing their businesses, which whether you're over 50 or not, that's quite essential, quite critical to success. Jeff Williams, Bizstarters.com. Such valuable information. We'll be talking a little bit more about some of the things you offer. I'm so happy to be here with you, and so we're also blessed to have your knowledge and resources.
Thank you so much, David.